All right. So welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming. We're continuing with the Lalitavistara Sutra, the play in full, and we're on chapter 13, encouragement. So we'll begin to recite. We'll take turns reciting as we usually do to get through the whole chapter. It's a very interesting chapter for a number of reasons, and so I think reading this, everybody reading this, it we say we're going to read these things, but often we don't. But when we accomplish something, we're at the end of this, we're going to be able to say that we accomplished reading the whole entire sutra out loud, and that gives you a great deal of confidence and encouragement. So that's the goal here. Oh, Brendan is with us tonight. Very good to see you, Brendan.
Good to see you, Lance, and everybody else. Good to be back.
Do you have your book?
I do. The ones you sent me recently. Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to be on chapter 13. So if you
Okay.
can get to that.
Got it right here.
Okay, good. All right, so what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to do a short opening prayers that includes the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. We want to do a long contemplation with that, but you'll see why in a few minutes. So we'll begin with the short refuge prayer. So everybody, at this time, please turn your microphones off, but recite out loud and with the short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chodam la, Shangju badu dagni kapsuchi. Dagi jinso ki pe sonamgi, Drola penshir sange jupa sho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and
Suffering
the
and the
causes of
causes of
suffering.
suffering.
May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sem tam she dewa dang dewe grodang dampa jorchi. Dognal dang donal gi gudang drawar jorchi. Dognal me pe dewa dang midra war jorchi. Ne ring chak dang ni dang drawe. Tang namla ne pa jorchi. So now we'll just refresh ourselves with the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So if you have our red book, it's on page 15. So precious human life. The freedoms and advantages so extremely are difficult to obtain accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? Oh, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When one obtains a body, which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. So take a moment and contemplate the meaning of precious human life. Think of the eight leisures and the 10 endowments. Okay. Next is impermanence. Ka. No matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, they are lies. Ka. The 8 worldly dharmas are like a painted rainbow. Think you can put your trust in them? In the certainty of death and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain, like the shadow of the setting sun. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire in fierce diligence. This life is impermanent, like clouds in the autumn sky. Birth and death migrators are the same as actors in a play or a dance. The life of beings is like lightning in the sky. Like water falling from a steep mountain cliff, it departs quickly, quickly. The nature of all phenomena is impermanence. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend any time like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. So contemplate the meaning of impermanence and recall the 8 worldly dharmas or the 8 worldly concerns. Gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, impermanence. Okay? Next is the suffering of samsara. Consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. In the 3 lower realms, and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. Contemplate the suffering of samsara. Birth, death, old age and sickness, suffering of human being, not getting what you want, but then you have to protect it, not being with the ones you love, being with those that you'd rather not be with, the sufferings of samsara. And then next is karma, cause, and result. Even if one were a king at the time of death, one's possessions, enjoyments, friends, and retinue will not follow. But wherever that sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. The fruits of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding of all dharmas. Henceforth, practice the Dharma by distinguishing between what should be practiced and what should be given up. Contemplate the meaning of karma, cause, and result. Okay, so this was just a short reminder to because in chapter 13, in this particular, there are references to the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, as well as to the 12 links of dependent origination and many other practices and prayers that we find have their source coming from the Lalitavistara Sutra. So this is one of the points that we've been making, that many of the practices and prayers that we use every day have their roots in these sutras. So being able to read, recite, and contemplate these sutras really gives us a firmer foundation on to understand how the Dharma has evolved over the many years and so on. So one of the things that's important is that this sutra is focused upon the bodhisattva. And the bodhisattva is Siddhartha Gautama, who is the Buddha before he becomes enlightened. And the lessons, the examples that are being used, the accomplishments that the bodhisattva is making are the accomplishments of a human being. In other words, we are on that same path. So we can be recognizing ourselves in this whole Lalitavistara Sutra, seeing ourselves here as we are on the path to become Buddha. Now, some of us are going to have very small reference points, and some of us are going to have bigger reference points. But as we continue to practice and continue to learn and everything, it's going to grow, it's going to increase. And the things that we didn't recognize now, later on, we'll recognize very easily because we have come to those points in our career and learning these things and be able to say, oh, that's what it meant, that's what it was. And I realized that because I discovered that for myself and so on. So that's my point about this, is that we should be seeing ourselves as the bodhisattva to whatever degree we can in these prayers and practices of the sutras. Before we begin any further, does anybody have any questions or comments about the sutras or about anything else related to this that we can talk about first?
Lance, I found your description that we were contemplating on the suffering of samsara to be very poignant and moving. So I'll just say that.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, we
Welcome.
all have that in common. Okay, so to really digest this and to familiarize ourselves with it, Brendan, do you want to say something else?
Nope, just clearing my throat. Sorry.
All right, so what I'd like to do is we're going to take turns reading this. So to get started, I'll read the first page, and then Gary, can you read the second page? And if you can write down this order so you remember. So Gary, be second, and then Brendan, can you read the third page? And then Matthew, can you read the fourth page?
Could I ask you for a favor real quick?
Sure.
Because how I have mine on my tablet isn't broken up into pages in the same way, this
Oh.
corresponding pages. Could you just tell me the verse numbers of the ones I'm reading?
All right, well, let me see. So I said you were going to be fourth, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 is going to be 13.16 through 13.21. So it's a short one.
Thank you.
And let me point out that if you are the reader for a page, and the page and the verse that you're on continues to the next page, please continue reading until you finish that verse. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then, so Matt was finished at 13:21. And then, so Matt is going to follow Brendan. So you're going to have to pay attention to get your cues. Then the fifth page is going to be Kunga. So if you can read that, please. And that starts at 1322. And then because Curtis is here, he's agreed to read as well. So he'll read the 6th page. So, and then I'll come back and I'll read the 7th page. So it's 6 of us that are reading. Okay? So I'm just gonna write the order down just in case something goes wrong.
Lance,
So Lance,
Gary,
Gary,
Brendan,
and Brendan,
Matthew, Congo, Curtis.
Matt, and Kurt. All right, so we may have a little bit of a hiccup between Brendan and Matt because of his page difference, but we'll figure that out.
I'm sorry. I think mine is broken down by pages in the same way as yours. Now that I look at it, I'm sorry. I was mistaken.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well, that's better then. All right. So if you've got a pencil and a paper or something like that, if you want to make any kind of quick notes and you want to come back and talk about something, because we're going to go through and read the whole thing. And then there'll be time at the end of the session to have a bit of a discussion. So if there are points that you want clarity on or comment on or something like that, then jot down where that might be so we can go back and reference it.
Lance, could you give me mine again?
Your what?
My assigned sections.
Page, the 2nd page. So you follow me. Okay?
Okay.
And remember that we're going to continue the verse if it carries over to the next page.
Are we going to read the whole chapter?
We're going to read the whole chapter.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay?
Lance, it's like 20 pages long.
Curtis, you can, if you don't want to read, you don't have to. This is
Okay.
a little bit of forced dharma here for Curtis's sake. We never know what we can do until we have to do it, right? Okay. All right, so we begin chapter 13, encouragement. Monks, while the bodhisattva was staying in the midst of his retinue of consorts, there were numerous gods, nagas, yakshas, gandharvas, demigods, garudas, kinnaharas, and mahoragas as well, Shakya and Brahma, and the guardians of the world, who were eager to make offerings to the bodhisattva. They arrived calling out in joyous voices. However, monks, as time went on, many of these gods, nagas, yakshas, gandharvas, demigods, garudas, kinnaharas, and magaras, as well as Sakra, Brahma, and the world protectors, began to think to themselves, quote, "Now, isn't this a sacred being staying too long among the consorts? There are beings who have been brought to maturity over a long period of time through the 4 means of attracting disciples, namely generosity, kind talk, meaningful actions, and practicing what one preaches. Once he attains awakening, those beings would be able to understand his teachings on the Dharma. But perhaps all these suitable recipients for their teaching may be gone by them. In that case, the bodhisattva will leave his home and awaken to unexcelled, perfect, and complete Buddhahood on his own." So they approached the bodhisattva, full of respect and devotion. They joined their palms and bowed before him. Standing expectantly in his presence, they asked with concern, "Will we ever witness the bodhisattva, this sacred, supreme, and pure being, leave home as an act of renunciation? Once he has left home, will we see him sitting under the great king of trees, taming Mara and his army, and awakening to unexcelled, perfect, and complete Buddhahood? When shall we see him accessing the 10 powers of the thus gone ones, the 4 types of fearlessness of the thus gone ones, and the 18 unique qualities of a Buddha, or spinning the unexcelled wheel of Dharma in its 12 aspects, or teaching through a vast display of Buddhahood according to the wishes of the world, including its gods, humans, and demigods, and satisfying them.
Monks, for a long time, many uncountable eons, the bodhisattva had always and continuously been without any need to rely on others. He was his own master with regard to worldly concerns, as well as those that go beyond the world. For a long time, he had known the right time, the occasion, and the opportunity for the practice of all aspects of the roots of virtue. His higher knowledge was flawless, and his 5 types of super knowledge were fully manifest. Since he had a masterly command of his sense faculties, he could manifest miraculous powers. He knew indeed what was timely as well as what was untimely. Seeking the right opportunity, he would never miss it, just like the great ocean, which is always timely. Since he possessed the power of clairvoyant wisdom, he knew everything himself. This is the appropriate time for reaching out. This is the time for separation. This is the time for getting together. This is the time for showing kindness. This is the time for resting in equanimity. This is the time to speak. This is the time to remain silent. This is the time to leave home. This is the time to take ordination. This is the time to recite. This is the time for deep reflection. This is the time to stay in solitude. This is the time to stay within royal circles. This is the time to be among priests and householders. And this is the time to be among gods, nagas, yaksas, gandharvas, demigods, garudas, kinnaras, mahoragas, sakra, brahma, the world protectors, monks, nuns, as well as male and female novices. This is the time to teach the Dharma, and this is the time to rest inwardly. At all times, the bodhisattva knew whether the time was suitable or not, and he watched out for opportunities. Monks, for bodhisattvas who have reached their last existence, it is customary that the Buddhas, the blessed ones who dwell in the realms within the 10 directions, always come while these bodhisattvas amuse themselves in the female quarters and encourage them through singing and music to enter the gate of Dharma. On this topic it is said, whatever perfect beings abide in the worlds of the 10 directions, it is through their special power that, accompanied by music, these verses and songs, so pleasant and sweet, encourage the Supreme Being to renounce his home. When witnessing others who suffer greatly, you previously made an aspiration to become their protector and refuge, as well as their supreme supporter and defender.
Virtuous hero, remember your previous actions and your vow to help others. This is your time, your moment. So, Supreme Sage, renounce your palace. It is for the sake of those for whom you have previously given up the best of wealth and even your head, arms, and legs, that you will become a Buddha, the supreme tamer of gods and humans, the foremost in the world and a storehouse of hundreds of qualities. With discipline, you must perform austerities and hardship. With patience, you will benefit others. With diligence, you will unfold all good qualities. Your concentration and knowledge will have no equal in the 3 realms. The many beings afflicted by anger and blemished by hate must be embraced by your love, thus gone one. Those who are lost and without any qualities of goodness, and the many unskilled ones must all feel your compassion. With your merit and wisdom, virtue pervades your body. With your stainless concentration and higher knowledge, you shine brightly. You illumine the 10 directions, like the stainless moon free from clouds. Many such pleasing words accompanied by music are sung by the victorious ones. They encourage the one who gods and humans venerate, saying, "This is the time for you to renounce your palace." Monks, the home of the bodhisattva was indeed exquisite, complete with the most perfect belongings. It was anything a person could wish for, full of all the things necessary for comfortable living. Like a divine palace, it had the very best of verandas, turrets, porticos, skylights, corridors, upper floors, and terraces. It was adorned with all sorts of jewels and many different arrangements and patterns. Parasols, flags, and banners were hoisted. Bells made of gems hung from lattices, as did hundreds of thousands of silk streamers. There were garlands of pearls set with various precious stones, and bridges built with boards that were ornamented by all types of jewels. Flower garlands and decorating hung everywhere. Incense burners dispensed fragrant smoke, and silk canopies were spread above. Fragrant flowers from all seasons adorned the grounds, and the ponds were full of white lotus flowers in bloom. In all the many lotus ponds were flocks of many types of birds, such as leaf birds, parrots, mynas, cuckoos, swans, peacocks, wild geese, punalas, and pheasants, that all called out in their beautiful voices. There were grounds covered in blue beryl that reflected all the many fine features of the palace. It was so delightful to watch, and thus one could never get enough.
The exquisite and perfect mansion where the bodhisattva lived was a source of supreme pleasures and joy. In his palace, his body was always pure and stainless. He was adorned with flower garlands and jewelry, and his limbs were scented with the finest and most sweet-smelling oils. To cover his body, he wore stainless white clothes of the finest quality, without any blemishes whatsoever. His bedding was made of divine fabrics of the finest thread, and as soft to the touch as the Kasalandika cloth. There on his perfect couch, he lay surrounded by his wonderful retinue of consorts, who all resembled goddesses. All the girls were virtuous, agreeable, and wholesome in conduct. Inside this beautiful palace, the bodhisattva woke up to the sound of conchas, kettle drums, clay drums, wood drums, lutes, harps, tambourines, cymbals, and flutes that produced the most sweet-sounding and melodious tunes to accompany their many sweet songs. The girls woke up to the bodhisattva with beautiful and soft songs accompanied by the melodious tones of flutes. However, due to the grace of the Blessed One, the Buddhas in the 10 directions, the instruments suddenly began to encourage the bodhisattva by resounding with these verses. The girls are delighted and joyful. They play fine melodies on beautiful instruments. At that moment, by the power of the victorious ones in the 10 directions, these many verses can be heard, all in their diversity. Seeing the beings who are forever without protector, hero, you made the following promise: I will awaken of the supreme state without old age or grief, so that I can deliver all beings from death, old age, and sufferings. Therefore, virtuous one, quickly leave this fine city and practice the conduct of previous sages. When you reach the right place on the earth, you shall awaken to the incomparable wisdom of the victorious ones. In the past, you gave away your exquisite wealth and riches, and even your hands, feet, and dear body. Great sage, now is your time. Open up the limitless river of Dharma for sentient beings.
Your stainless and virtuous discipline have never been broken. Until now, you have always been adorned by the best qualities. Great sage, no one has disciplined like you. Now you must free beings from their many afflictions. For hundreds of lives, you train in forbearance. You have patience with all kinds of evil words and others. Through patience, you are forbearing, self-controlled, and at ease. Lord of men, now you must decide to depart from home. Your diligence is firm, steadfast, and unshakable. Well done when you are great from beginning to end. Virtuous one, you will tame Mara, the evil one, and his family, and dry up the entire 3 lower realms. This is why you have practiced disciplined conduct and austerities, to burn the afflictions of these evil and degenerate times, to let a rain of nectar fall, to soothe the thirst of those who for so long have had no protector. Now remember your supreme vow from the past. I will leave behind this beautiful town, quickly attain the state without death or sorrow, and satisfy those who suffer from thirst with the nectar of immortality. You are skilled in the supreme action of knowledge. Your wisdom is vast and limitless. So now, virtuous one, shine the beautiful light of knowledge on those who are caught in delusion and doubt. For hundreds of lives you have trained in love, as well as compassion, joy, and equanimity. All those perfect acts you have performed, you must now share with sentient beings. Through all the splendor of the victorious ones in 10 directions, these verses, the wonderful blossoms of qualities, come about. Through music they reverberate beautifully, encouraging the youth to rest on his couch. At that time, the joyful maidens who bring pleasure, beautiful as they are, played melodious tunes. At the same time, the victorious ones in the 10 directions who tame gods and humans. Let this perfect speech be heard through the instruments in a pleasant sound.
You who benefit beings and possess many qualities, have made the virtues of the victorious ones your own as you traveled the paths. Remember your past disciplined conduct and austerities. Quick, go to the supreme tree and attain the state of immortality. Gods and humans are thirsty, lacking the qualities of the victorious ones. Yet your resolve equals the task, so grant them the nectar of immortality. You possess the features of the 10 powers, and all learned ones venerate you. Quick, Lord of men, dispense that nectar. You, benefactor of the world, delight in the qualities of the victorious ones. In your past lives you gave away your wealth, jewels and gold, your beloved wife and children, your land, cities and villages, and even your own head, eyes, hands, and feet. O best of men, in former times you were a virtuous king. When a person came before you and said, "Please give me this land with its cities and villages," you gave it away with a happy and undisturbed mind. In former times you were a personal priest to a king. You attended upon the masters and caused no harm to anyone. Best among priests, you established many ordinary beings in virtue. After you died, you were reborn in the divine realms. Prince, in the past, you were a perfect sage. At that time, an evil king cut off your limbs in anger, yet your mind remained undisturbed, and you performed your caste duties. At that time, milk flowed from your arms and legs. In the past, you were a sage's son, known as Shyama. In the finer shelter of the mountains, you delighted in your difficult discipline. Yet when a ruler pierced you with his poisonous arrows, you were not disturbed, and only felt pity for him. In the past, O receptacle of qualities, when you were a leader of a pack of deer, a hunter was carried off by a raging mountain torrent. Wishing to help, you carried him to dry land. Even as you brought your enemy to safety, you remained calm.
Perfect man, in previous times you were born as the son of a priest. When your gem fell in the ocean, you dried out the ocean. As the strong and firm leader of human beings, you recovered the valuable gem. Perfect being, in times past, you were born as a holy sage. Once when a priest approached you saying, "Please give me your protection." "Sage," you told him, "venerable priest, I will rid you of the enemy." You gave away your body while the priest kept his. In the past, you approached the sage Shema at his place by the tree. He asked you how many leaves were on the tree. With your skill, you counted the leaves accurately and told him the exact number. Previously, you were a virtuous, quick-darting parrot that lived in a tree. Although the tree died, you remained, remembering its kindness. The King of gods saw your virtues and rejoiced. He restored the perfect tree to its former glory. Your disciplined conduct and austerities are beyond compare. You are a receptacle of virtue, rich in qualities, treading the path of virtue. Your time has come to abandon your city and your land. Quick, establish beings in the virtuous actions of the virtuous ones. When gems of playful women, exquisitely dressed, their bodies adorned, play sweet music on the best of instruments, then by the glory of the victorious ones in the 10 directions, these beautiful verses emerge from the beautiful sounds of the instruments. You vowed, "I will be the protector of the world, plagued by old age and death. Light of the world, in times past, for many eons, you have made this wish. Lion of men, remember your past aspirations. Lord of men, this is your time for renouncing your home. For billions of lives, you generously made many lavish gifts, giving away your wealth, gems, gold, fine cloth, a variety of jewels, your hands, feet, eyes, your beloved child, and the wealth of your kingdom. Still, you never had any resentment or anger for those who took it.
You, Sasaketu, have been a peaceful king with fine teeth, loving and compassionate, with a crown jewel shining like the moon. Such were your main deeds, mighty hero with the beautiful eyes of a king. As a king, for billions of years, you have practiced generosity gladly. Thus gone one, for many eons, you have practiced discipline. Like a stainless jewel, your discipline has been pure. Like a female yak that protects her cat, you have guarded your discipline. Since you delight in discipline, you have done so much to benefit beings. As a perfect elephant, the arrows of the evil hunter hit you. Yet you felt love and compassion for this harsh enemy and protected him. You gave him your fine and beautiful tusks and did not relinquish your discipline. You displayed such discipline many times. Delighting in forbearance, you had patience with the many harms, sufferings, harsh words, murders, and imprisonments inflicted upon you by others. In the past, you have always provided others with every comfort, and although they were your executioners, you still remained forbearing. Protector, once you were a bear living in a mountain lair. At that time, you rescued a man, frightened and terrified, out of an avalanche. You served him roots and berries and provided him with every comfort. Although he soon killed you and carried you off, you remained patient. When, through austerities, you sought awakening and wisdom of many qualities, you possessed fortitude, determination, unshakable resolve, and diligence. The strength of your diligence could overcome even the most powerful demon. Lion of men, the time has come for renunciation. In the past, you were the finest of horses, as white as snow. With compassion, you traveled swiftly through the sky to the land of demonesses. You rescued the men in distress and brought them to safety. Many times you have demonstrated such diligence.
Brendan?
I apologize. I thought we were only reading once. Can you tell me what verse I'm at?
Oh, 13.54.
Thank you. A skilled meditator, you destroyed afflictions with calmness, discipline, and restraint, and tamed the fickle mind which chases after the pleasures of the senses. Since you delight in concentration, your personal qualities benefit others. Now, perfect being, the time has come for you to demonstrate your concentration. In the past, you were a well-to-do sage who delighted in concentration. People who had lost their king invited you and consecrated you to kingship. You showed these people the 10 virtues and established them on the path of Brahma. Later, as they died, they all proceeded to the realm of Brahma. You have mastered the art of knowing the destinies of beings in all directions. You know their actions, languages, and capacities. You have perfected the way, the discipline, and different types of memory. Royal son, today the time for renunciation has come. In the past, when you saw anyone with wrong views, who suffered from old age, death, and all the different afflictions, you instructed them in the straight path that destroys existence. You who conquer darkness, you have benefited the world greatly. These many virtuous and beautiful verses emerge from the tune of the instruments. By the glory of the victorious ones, they encourage the hero. Intelligent one, the time for renunciation has come. When you see these suffering beings, do not remain indifferent. The pleasing and joyful women are adorned with fine clothes, gems, necklaces, perfumes, and flower garlands. They wake the Supreme Being with music and song. By the power of the victorious ones, the instruments call out these verses. It was for the sake of others that for many eons you gave up what is hard to abandon and were disciplined, forbearing, and diligent. Through your training and concentration and knowledge, your time has come. Guide, quick, direct your mind toward renunciation without delay. Before you relinquish treasuries of jewels, gold, silver, and ornaments, in all those lives you performed sacrifices of many types. You gave away your wife, sons, daughters, body, kingdom, and even your life. For the sake of awakening, you gave away without limits what is hard to abandon.
You have been kings, rich in merit and renowned for splendor. Nimindar, Nimi, Krishnabandhu, Brahmadatta, Kisaran, Zahara Yanja, Dharmasinti, Arasamat, and Dradanu. Always considering the matter well, you gave to lowly people what is hard to give. You have been powerful, Sutasoma, Diptavira, Virya, and Punya Rasmi. Generous and powerful, you also acknowledge the kindness of others. O royal sage, you were the moon-like hero Satya Vardhana, the king Subhasita Gavisan, and the gentle Sumati. You have been Khandra Prabha, Visagaman, and Renu, Lord of the 10 directions. You have been the king of Kasi, Pradhanasura, Ratnasuda, and Santaga. When you were these rulers, as well as others, you gave what is hard to give. As you showered a rain of gifts then, may you now shower a rain of Dharma. In the past, you saw the best of beings, as numerous as sands in the Ganges, and made an inconceivable and limitless number of offerings to them. As you searched for supreme awakening in order to liberate others then, hero, now the time has come to renounce this perfect city. At the beginning, you offered Amoga Darsan, a saw flower. With a mind full of devotion, you gazed for a moment at Vairochana. You offered Dandubisvara, the Miro Balan fruit. When you saw Kandana's house, you brought your grass torch and held it up. When Renu entered the city, you scattered a handful of fragrant powder at him. When Dharmasvara taught the Dharma, you applauded him. When you saw Samanta Darsan, you declared your homage to him. You joyfully threw a golden chain towards Mahar Iskandan. To Dharma Dava Daja, you offered a robe, and to Naroda a handful of beans. You offered Janaketu a flower of the Asoka tree, and soup to Sarati. You offered a candle to Ratnasikin, and medicine to Padmayoni. To Sarva Bibu, you offered a pearl necklace, and to Sagara a lotus flower.
You offered a canopy to Padmagarpa and a rain cover to Simha. To Salindra Raja, you offered clarified butter and milk to Pusapita. To Yasodhara, you offered Karanta flowers and food to Sadhya Darsan. You bowed down to Janana Muru and offered robes to Nagadata. To Atyuka Gaman, you offered the finest sandalwood and a handful of salt to Saya. You offered lotus flower to Mahavayua and jewel to Rasa Miraraja. To Sakamuni, you offered a handful of gold, and you praised Indra Ketu. You offered earrings to Surya Nanda and a golden crown to Samati. To Naga Bebu, you offered a jewel and a cotton mat to Pusya. To Baisya Vara Raja, you offered a precious parasol and a throne to Sima Ketu. You offered Guna Radira, a net of precious stones and instruments to Kasayapa. To Asya Ketu, you offered powders of exquisite scent and flowers to Katayaka. You offered Apsko Baya Raja, a multi-storied palace and a flower garland to Loka Pajita. To Tagara Sikhin, you offered your kingdom, and to Durajaya much incense. You offered yourself to Mahapradipa and jewel ornaments to Padma Matara. To Dharmaketu, you offered various flowers and blue lotuses to Dipamkara. In the past, you made these and other offerings, manifold and marvelous to the best of beings. Remember the Buddhas of the past and your offerings to these teachers. Do not abandon those who suffer without protection. Leave your home. Merely seeing Dipankara, you attained supreme forbearance and discovered, accordingly, the 5 indestructible clairvoyant perceptions. Subsequently, you performed inconceivable offerings for limitless eons to all the Buddhas in all the universes. Now, limitless eons have passed, and those Buddhas have passed into nirvana. Where are all your past bodies and names now? All things perish by nature. There is no permanence in conditioned things. Delights, kingdoms, and enjoyments are impermanent, so leave this perfect city. Like the fierce and terrifying inferno, when this eon comes to an end, Old age, sickness, and death bring great and terrible fear. In the end, all things are conditioned, therefore cannot last. Look at those who suffer intensely. Incapable one, renounce.
As the retinue of women wake up the Lord of men, who was resting in his comfortable bed, with sounds of lutes, flutes, and other instruments, at that time the following words came from within the sounds of the instruments. The three worlds are ablaze with the suffering of old age and sickness. The world is ablaze with the fire of death and without a protector. Always deluded in impure existence, beings spin like a bee caught in a vase. The three worlds are unstable, like autumn clouds. The birth and death of beings is like watching a play. The life of a being passes quickly, like a lightning bolt in the sky or a mountain stream. By the power of craving for existence and ignorance, beings take birth as humans, gods, or in the three lower realms. In their ignorance, they continuously circle among these five existences like the spinning of a potter's wheel. Beautiful forms, sweet sounds, fragrant smells, delicious taste, and pleasant touch. The snare of these unfortunate times has caught beings, like the hunter's snare catches a monkey. The objects of enjoyment lead to much suffering and harm. They bring fear, make enemies, and lead to depravity. A noble being will reject them like a bowl of excrement, the edge of a sword, or poison ivy. The objects of enjoyment always bring fear and depravity. They make us suffer when we think of them, and they make us blind. They always produce causes of fear and are the roots of suffering. They make the vine of craving for existence grow. Just like a terrifying fire pit, so the noble ones understand desire, or they see it like a great swamp, or like walking on swords, or like the edge of a knife smeared with honey. Like a viper's head or a bowl of excrement, so the wise ones understand desire. Desires are like a pang of pain, and as fragile as a bird's egg. Like a bone among dogs, they are the prime cause of enmity.
Desired objects are like a moon reflected in water, like reflection or an echo, like an illusion, or like a theater play, or like a dream. Thus perceive the noble ones. Desired objects are momentary and empty. They are as untrue as a magical illusion or a mirage. They have no substance, like a bubble of water or foam. The learned ones realize that these objects emerge from conceptualization. At first in youth, when one has a fine body, one is liked and desired and acts like a child. Yet when old age, suffering, and diseases conquer the splendor of the body, one is abandoned, just like a dried up river is abandoned by a deer. When one is powerful with the best of wealth, grains, and possessions, one is liked and desired and acts like a child. Yet when the wealth is spent and suffering sets in, one is abandoned just like an empty wilderness. Like a tree with flowers and fruits, people love a person who delights in giving. Yet when the wealth is gone, one becomes a beggar, miserable in old age. At that point, just like a vulture, one becomes disliked. When one is powerful, rich, and handsome, one is like a lord. People like to meet such a being, and one pleases their senses. Yet when one is old, suffering from disease, and all wealth is spent, one becomes as disagreeable as death. When one is old and youth has passed, like a tree struck by lightning, one is worn out and terrifying to others, like a ruined house. Sage, quick, tell us how to avoid old age. Old age withers men and women, just as a malu ivy does to a thick sow forest. Old age robs one's diligence, energy, and power, like a person caught in a swamp. Old age makes the beautiful person ugly. Old age steals one's splendor and robs one's power. Old age takes your happiness and defeats you. Old age brings death and destroys your vital force.
There are hundreds of diseases, and being struck by sickness brings torment to beings, like deer tormented by forest fire. Look at those beings that are overcome by old age and sickness, and quick. explain how to be free of suffering. Just as the heavy snow during winter steals all life from grass, trees, and herbs, so, alas, do sickness and old age rob the vitality of beings and destroy their faculties, bodies, and strength. Old age and disease exhaust all stores of wealth and grain. They bring great anguish to beings. They create resentment and bring animosity among loved ones. They torment everyone intensely, like the sun in the sky. When the time of passing away has arrived, one is always separated from one's favorite possessions and loved ones. There will be no returning or meeting again, just as fruits or leaves taken by the river never meet the tree again. Death makes the powerful helpless. Death robs everyone like a river carrying off a tree. One must proceed alone, without friend or company. One is powerless but to follow the results of one's actions. Death devours beings by the hundreds, like a sea monster devouring numerous beings, or like a Garuda devouring a Naga, or an elephant catching a lion, or how a fire devours plants, herbs, and living creatures. To liberate beings from these hundreds of calamities, thus you made your aspiration. Now remember that aspiration of bygone times. The time for leaving your home has come. While the group of delighted women are waking up the great sage with their music, at this time, through the power of the dust golden ones, these wonderful verses come out from the sound of the instruments. Everything compounded quickly disintegrates. Nothing lasts longer than a flash of lightning in the sky. Your time has come. The time for leaving home, disciplined one.
Conditioned things are impermanent and without stability. Their nature is to break like an unbaked earthen vase. They are like things on loan from another, or a city of sand, so short-lived are they. All these conditioned things are impermanent by nature, like mud plaster applied during the rains, or the sandy banks of the river. They depend on conditions and have a feeble nature. Conditioned things are like the light of a candle. They have the nature of quickly coming and going. Like the wind, they do not remain. Like foam, they are feeble and unsubstantial. Conditioned things are inert and empty. When examined, they are like the stem of the plantain tree. They are like an illusion that deceives the mind. They are like an empty fist that tricks children. All conditioned things come about based on causes and conditions. One causing the other, they arise in dependence. Yet all the childish beings do not recognize this. Just as Velvaja grass depends on munja grass to give a rope proper strength, or just as a bucket in a well depends on a winch, one unable to function without the other, so too function the 12 links of dependent origination, being all in mutual dependence. One thing follows after another, and it cannot be seen where one thing ends and the other begins. When you have a seed, a sprout can grow. Yet the seed is not the sprout. Still, it is not different. In this way, the true nature knows no permanence or impermanence. Formative factors have ignorance for their cause. Formative factors do not truly exist. Ignorance and formative factors are naturally empty and inert.
The seal makes the mark of the seal appear, yet the seal itself was not transferred anywhere. It is not in the mark, yet it is also not elsewhere. In this way, the formative factors are beyond annihilation and permanence. It is based on the I and form that the I consciousness appears, yet the form is not dependent on the I, nor is the form transferred to the I. Although all of this is without a self and is repulsive, beings perceive it as having a self and is beautiful. Although that is a mistaken and corrupt imputation, the I consciousness arises from it. The consciousness ceases and re-arises. The practitioner observes this arising and ceasing of consciousness. It goes nowhere and it does not come from anywhere. The practitioner perceives consciousness as empty and illusory. Since the combination of these three is needed, the lower and upper pieces of wood and the action of the hands, a fire is born in dependence on conditions. It is born, fulfills its purpose, and quickly ceases. In this way, some scholars investigate. Where does this come from and where does it proceed? They check in all directions and find that nothing comes and nothing goes. The conditions for the aggregates, the sense fields, and the elements are ignorance, craving, and karma. When all of these assemble, that is called a sentient being, although ultimately nothing is there. Based on the lips, throat, palate, and tongue, the sounds of syllables are produced. This is not so with just the throat or the palate. No sound can be found in them individually. Speech occurs based on all these things coming together. It emerges based on the power of mind and intelligence. Yet mind and speech are by nature invisible. They are nowhere to be found inside or outside.
When the learned one analyzes the coming and going of speech, voices, sounds, and tunes, they see that all speech is like an echo, momentary and without substance. Sound is based on wood and strings, meeting with the movements of the hands. Due to these three things, sounds can emerge from instruments such as the melodious lute. When some skillful people analyze this and wonder, where does the sound come from and where does it go, they may search in all directions, yet never find the origin of sound or its destination. This is how all compounded phenomena appear, based on causes and conditions. The practitioner, by observing the true nature of conditioned things, sees that these things are empty and inert. The aggregates, sense fields, and elements are empty within and empty without. They all lack a self and do not abide. Everything is essentially like space. That everything is this way, you realized when you met Dipankara, that which you understood exactly as it is. You must now make gods and humans comprehend. Beings are scorched by attachment and anger, yet they are falsely imputed. Such ills are not for real. Guide, release the stream of nectar, the cooling waters of peace from the cloud of compassion. Once I attain supreme awakening, I will gather noble wealth for beings. Skillful one, saying this, you sought out supreme awakening, and for many millions of eons you made offerings to the learned. Remembering your previous actions, charioteer, do not forget to bring this noble wealth to those who are depressed, poor, and suffering. Gather them with your noble wealth.
I will show millions of beings the perfect gate to the nectar of the higher realms. Saying this, you guarded your discipline well in order to block the way to the three lower realms. Keep your discipline and fulfill your wishes. Remember your past actions. Close the gates to the three lower realms and open the gates to the nectar of the higher realms. I will put up with beings' hostility and anger and liberate everyone from the ocean of existence. I will establish them in peace and happiness without disease. Saying this, you have always trained in forbearance. Remember your previous actions. Do not abandon those who engage in harmful actions. Due to being disturbed by animosity, ill will, and harmful wishes, you said, I will bring those beings to the stage of forbearance. I will prepare the ship of Dharma, deliver beings from the ocean of existence, and establish them in peace and happiness without disease. Saying this, you have relied on diligence to achieve that. Remember your previous actions. The four rivers carry beings away. Quick, rescue those beings that have no guide, through the power of your diligence and the strength of your discipline. I will establish on the noble path those beings that have confused faculties and suffer from monkey-like thoughts. O gentle one, to accomplish that, you have trained in concentration that expels disturbing thoughts. Remember your previous actions. Do not abandon those afflicted beings who are agitated by the web of disturbing emotions. Establish these beings in one-pointed concentration.
I will give beings who are veiled by the darkness of delusion and ignorance a vision of many hundred doors to the Dharma. I will give them eyes that can see reality. Saying this, you have meditated on knowledge. Remember your previous actions. To those beings who are veiled by the darkness of delusion and ignorance, you must give the excellent light of sacred knowledge, the eye of Dharma, which is stainless and impeccable. Verses like this emerge from the sounds of the women's instruments. Hearing them, all the bodhisattva's sleepiness vanishes, and he sets his mind on perfect and supreme awakening. Monks, in this way, even in the monks, in this way, even as the bodhisattva was with his retinue of consorts. He could not avoid hearing the sound of the Dharma. He could not avoid thinking about the Dharma. Monks, this was because for so long the bodhisattvas had paid his respects for the Dharma, and those who teach the Dharma from the innermost core of his being, he strove toward the Dharma, wished for the Dharma, and his only delight was in the Dharma. As he searched for the Dharma, he was insatiable. He taught that the Dharma just as he had heard it. He was a master of generosity in bestowing the gift of the unexcelled great Dharma. He taught the Dharma without seeking rewards. It was without any stinginess when it came to teaching the Dharma. Regarding the Dharma, he never held back anything as a teacher. He practiced the Dharma that he taught. He was brave in making the Dharma manifest. He found his home in the Dharma, his protection in the Dharma, and his refuge in the Dharma. His point of reference was the Dharma, and his ultimate resort was the Dharma. With the Dharma as his object of meditation, proficient in forbearance, he practiced the perfection of knowledge and attained skillful means. Monks, the bodhisattva demonstrated with a playful mastery of his great skillful means, the actions conforming to the wishes of the entire retinue of consorts. He was acting in conformity with the bodhisattvas of the past, who, while being beyond the world, acted in worldly ways. Since the bodhisattva had long ago realized the shortcomings of desire, he now demonstrated sensual enjoyment without himself wanting it, simply in order to ripen others. By the unique power of the accumulation of merit gathered through limitless roots of virtue, he demonstrated the qualities of the ruler of the world. He demonstrated a complete enjoyment of the delightful forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and textures that went far beyond anything known to gods and humans in terms of quality and extent.
He demonstrated a mastery of mind, which was free from attachment to any of his delightful maidens of pleasure. He ripened those who were now in his company as friends due to the power of their previous aspirations and their accumulated roots of virtue. As such, he was able to stay among the consorts without ever being disturbed by the stains of worldly emotions. While watching for the time to ripen the potential in those who were around him, the bodhisattva kept his former promise acutely in mind. He actualized the Buddha and the Dharma and perfected the power of aspiration. For sentient beings, he felt great compassion and kept their complete freedom foremost in his mind. He understood that in the end, any amount of wealth will be used up. He understood that samsara is full of many calamities and terrors. He broke free from the evil shackles of Mara, extricated himself from the prison of cyclic existence, and directed his attention to nirvana. Monks, from the very beginning, the bodhisattva had already understood the many shortcomings of cyclic existence. With all his heart, he stopped striving after compounded phenomena, as well as all kinds of grasping and clinging. Instead, he now only felt interest in the Buddha Dharma. He turned toward the state of nirvana and turned his back on samsara. He delighted in the domain of the thus gone one, because he had separated himself from the domain of Mara. Perceiving the three realms to be ablaze with the shortcomings of existence, his wish was to free himself from them, and he became skilled in removing himself from the shortcomings and faults of cyclic existence. His wish was to become ordained, and his mind was filled with the thought of leaving home. He was determined to live in solitude and delighted in seeking remoteness. His wish was to be completely on his own and at peace. He strove to be of help both for himself and for others, and was a hero in unexcelled persistence. He wished to be of service to the world and to assist the world. He wished happiness and the peace of accomplishment for the world. He had compassion for the world and wanted to help. He was filled with love, saturated with great compassion. and skilled in the art of attracting others. He was never sad. He was skilled in ripening and training others. In his heart, he harbored the same love toward everyone that one has for one's only child. He had abandoned wishes for material objects and paid no attention to them. He delighted in giving and sharing. He never refused, but gave courageously with an open hand. He made religious offerings. He accumulated perfect merit and guarded it well. Through discipline, he freed himself from many stains of miserliness and was fully in control of his thoughts. He was a peerless, great benefactor. Even though he gave, he had no expectation of reward. He was a heroic giver, ready to subdue the hostile forces of the entire multitude of disturbing emotions, the primary ones being longing, desire, attachment, anger, haughtiness, pride, delusion, and miserliness.
He did not lapse from continually giving rise to the state of omniscience. He was always well protected by an armor of great generosity. He had love and compassion for the world and wished to help. His protection and coat of mail was diligence. His focus was on liberating others. His power was compassion and his strength was courage. He did not turn back. He had complete impartiality with regard to all beings, and his weapon was generosity. He was able to satisfy the hopes and wishes of others. He was a vessel fit for awakening, who continuously realized the Dharma. He would dedicate his awakening to all beings. He did not lower his banner. When he gave, his generosity was not involved with subject, object, and action. He had the sharp Vajra weapon of supreme wisdom. He conquered all opposing forces of disturbing emotions. He was disciplined, skilled, and behaved correctly. He guarded carefully all his physical, verbal, and mental acts, and exhibited fear of even the smallest unwholesome act. His discipline was perfectly pure. Mentally, he had abandoned all stains and was now clean and spotless. Disturbing emotions resulting from negative speech, harmful talk, adversity, criticism, blaming, cursing, beatings, threats, murder, bondage, and imprisonment did not perturb his mind, which was simply unshakable. He was perfectly forbearing and gentle. He had no harmful wishes, never did any damage, and utterly free from any ill will. He had given rise to a fervent diligence that was set on helping all other beings. It was a firm resolve. He could not be turned back from accomplishing all the practices that are the roots of virtue. He was mindful and composed. His mind was not distracted, and he rested one pointedly in concentration. He was skilled in analyzing phenomena. He had found the light, and all darkness had disappeared for him. His mind was filled with thoughts about the nature of impermanence, suffering, and repulsiveness. He was trained in the application of mindfulness, the thorough relinquishments, the bases of miraculous power, the faculties, the powers, the branches of awakening, the path, the four truths of the noble ones, and all the factors of awakening.
His mind was purified by tranquility and insight. He perceived the truth of dependent origination. Since he had realized the truth, he was not reliant on others. He mastered the three gateways to liberation. He had realized that all phenomena are like an illusion, a mirage, a dream, a moon reflected in the water, an echo, or an optical illusion. Monks, in this way, the bodhisattva lived according to the Dharma. In this way, he rested in wisdom. In this way, he rested in a state of immense qualities. In this way, he strove for the benefit of others. Encouraged even more by these verses, which emerged out of the sounds of the instruments through the blessings of the Buddhas in the 10 directions, the bodhisattva at this point manifested 4 Dharma gates in order to mature his retinue of consorts, just as all previous bodhisattvas in their last existence had done. What are these 4 Dharma gates? The first Dharma gate that he manifested is called pure accomplishment. It refers to the 4 means of attracting disciples: generosity, kind talk, meaningful actions, and practicing what one preaches. The second Dharma gate that he manifested is called the irreversible state. It produces the power of aspiration toward inexhaustible omniscience, and it ensures that the capacity of the 3 jewels is upheld and not wasted. The third Dharma gate that he manifested is called putting great compassion into practice. is a disposition of never abandoning any sentient beings. The fourth Dharma gate that he manifested is called the Great Array. It accomplishes the unique strength of the accumulation of wisdom, which ascertains the meaning of the different categories related to all the factors of awakening. These are the four Dharma gates that the bodhisattva manifested. At that point, in order to mature his entire retinue of consorts, he produced many miraculous manifestations. By the power of the bodhisattva, these miraculous displays cause hundreds of thousands of Dharma gates to emerge from the sounds of the music, such as the following. Through profound aspirations in one's heart and the heartfelt compassion for beings, the mind of the most eminent awakening is born. Such words rang out from the musical instruments. Faith, devotion, dedication, respect, lack of pride, and humility before the teachers, inquiry and search for the nature of virtue, and training in mindfulness. Such were the words that emerged. Generosity, calmness, collectedness, discipline, forbearance, diligence, concentration, absorption, knowledge, and means. Such were the words that emerged.
Through settling on love, compassion, joy, equanimity, higher knowledge, and the four means of attracting disciples, you will ripen beings. Such were the words that emerged. Analyze the four applications of mindfulness, the thorough relinquishments, the base of miraculous power, the five faculties, the five powers, the branches of awakening. Such were the words that emerged from the instruments. The divisions of the supreme eightfold path of the noble ones, tranquility, insight, impermanence, suffering, lack of self, and repulsiveness. Such were the words that emerged from the instruments. Freedom from attachment, solitude, knowledge of extinction, non-arising, cessation, non-abiding, and nirvana. Such were the words that emerged from the instruments. Through the power of the perfect bodhisattva, such words emerged from the instruments. As all these wanton women heard these words, they learned them and directed their aspirations for awakening to the perfect being. Monks, while the bodhisattva remained in this way among his retinue of consorts, he matured 84,000 women, along with many hundreds of thousands of assembled gods, for the attainment of unexcelled and perfect awakening. When it was time for the bodhisattva to leave home, there arrived a god from the heaven of joy by the name of Haridadeva on a visit concerning the bodhisattva's unexcelled and perfect awakening. Then, in the quiet of the night, he arrived at the palace together with an assembly of 32,000 gods, in order to serve and venerate the bodhisattva. As he arrived, he stopped in midair and sang these verses to the bodhisattva. You have manifested passing away, famed one, lion of men. You have also manifested birth in order to teach the retinue of consorts. You have acted in accordance with the world.
While acting in conformity with the world, you have ripened many gods and humans. Today that time has come, so please consider leaving home. If you are not free yourself, you will be unable to liberate others. A blind man cannot show the way. If you are free, you can liberate others. A person with sight can show the way. Those beings who are slaves to desire, attached to their house, wealth, sons, and wife, when being trained by you, may they too form a wish to leave their homes. You must abandon your dominion and the sports of love and the seven riches on the four continents. When people hear that you have renounced all this, the world with its gods and humans will long for the same. You are not delighted by desire. You rest in the bliss of concentration, yet many hundreds of gods and humans you awaken from their sleep. The prime of life is very short. It passes quickly like a cascading waterfall. As youth fades away, leaving home will not seem appealing. So depart from home now, while you are still young and in your prime. Fulfill your promise and act in the interests of the host of gods. Desired objects never satisfy. They are just like salty water from the ocean. Satisfied, however, are those who possess knowledge, the stainless noble ones who transcend the world. You are the delight of King Suddhodana's kingdom, who has won its hearts and minds. Your face is like a blooming lotus with hundreds of petals. So please consider departing now.
Beings suffer from the burning torment of disturbing emotions. They are without refuge, bound in heavy fetters. Hero, quick, establish them in peace, on the path to complete liberation. You, the skilled physician, please quickly establish in the happiness of nirvana the beings touched by diseases who have suffered for so long, by dispensing the medicine of Dharma. Beings are blind in the darkness of their stupor and bound by the web of wrong views. You are the eye of gods and humans, so quick shine the light of wisdom. We must see the one who has attained awakening and listen to the unexcelled Dharma. So say the many gods, demigods, nagas, yakshas, and gandharvas who are watching you. The king of nagas can see your splendor, since it illumines even his abode. He brings boundless offerings, so fulfill his wish for disciplined conduct. At the feet of the Bodhi tree, your mind shall be perfected, and we shall present you with 4 offering bowls. So say the 4 guardians of the world and their armies, who are all awaiting you. Even Brahma, the peaceful and compassionate one, who speaks lovingly, awaits you, thinking, I must request this Lord of men to turn the unexcelled wheel. The gods who venerate awakening are all present at the seat of awakening. They await you, thinking, we shall witness his awakening. It is true that the bodhisattvas demonstrate their occupation with consorts. You, however, should be at the forefront. Do not fall behind them. Remember the sweet sounding and soft words of the Pankara when he gave his prophecy. Utter now the sound of the victorious one's voice, the voice that is genuine and free from error. Congratulations. Any comments?
What a study on encouragement.
That was a heck of a chapter. There was a lot in there's a lot in there.
And a lot of those names and phrases are actually in the glossary. You know, we could spend a whole session or 2 sessions cross-referencing all those, looking at those. So, yes, this is packed full of stuff. This is good stuff. You know, but it's the kind of stuff that we have to choose to want to do. And part of it arises naturally. You know, a lot of the behavior, a lot of the thoughts that the bodhisattva was being called out for, the Hrideva was pointing out, you know, what the bodhisattva was going through, are things that have arisen naturally through development of virtue, through the development of bodhicitta, and so on. It comes up naturally. It's not that Siddhartha, the bodhisattva, had this book, had an instruction manual. You know, he didn't have an instruction manual, but he learned how to meditate, and through the meditation and through the self-realization of these things was he able to have these things, and then to declare that he wanted to be the embodiment of this. And that's what the Buddhas were referring to when they were saying, you asked for this, you know, and now it's up to you to leave the palace and go out, leave your home and go out into the world, to all beings who are waiting for you, because he had, you know, this unique gift to share with people that they too had that same unique gift. And he became the embodiment of that gift. He became the permission for them to find their own liberation, to find their own wisdom.
For
So
some
what?
reason, yeah, the line that really hit me was when he's talking about impermanence and conditioned things, independent origination. So when he goes through a list of things that compare it to, like these negative things that they compare the clinging to conditioned things. But the one for some reason that really like resonated with me was he says conditioned things are inert and empty. He goes through a few things, and then he says they're like an empty fist that tricks children.
Oh, what number is that?
That's 13.107. I don't know why. There's something about, he goes through lots of other different comparisons of things that it's like, but some, I don't know, just like the for some reason that one really hit me, because it says something to just like the foolishness of like, I don't know. The foolishness of like I played this game a million times and I just keep doing it and I always end up suffering and I just keep doing it over and over and over and over and over and over, and it's like as if like it's just like the belittling nature of it for some reason like hits me. I don't know.
What did you say?
An empty, that thing about an empty fist that tricks children, we're all familiar with that, both as children and perhaps as adults have done that with children. And oftentimes it can be just a trick, but oftentimes it can be very easily something that's unkind. And that's something about samsara. It's kind of unkind in its sufferings.
Well, the world grasps at you and you grasp back. To do. That's what we've been conditioned to do. And we never escape the rim of this bizarre spinning wheel that we're on. Because we've been taught not to leave the wheel. And I've spent a lifetime doing that.
What do you think about in the very beginning of this? It was talking about time, and it was talking about it's time. This is your time. This is my time. This is the time to do this. This is the time to do that. And the realization of the bodhisattva of that time, knowing when it's time to study the Dharma, knowing when it's time to do this, that, or the other thing, or to be with family, the time to be born in a particular situation, and so on like that. How do you relate to that? Because, here we are, what, 7 people, 6 people, we each have our own time. And are we aware of that? And I pointed out because, Matthew just got married, and he's got this whole thing in front of him. He's the youngest one among us and so on. And Gary and I are, the oldest guys here. And we see things from a different point of view. And Brendan has a family that he's very devoted to and so on. And he sees, his commitments to that in a different way. And Kunga as well. And he's got a very sophisticated practice that he's involved in teaching other people and so on. He has a great Sangha and so on. And Curtis is amazing. He goes to all these different places and he's checking out, the Hindu places, and he's checking out the Buddhist places and the different schools and the different lineages and so on. And it's time for him to do that. We all have these times to do things, and they're all accumulating to this wisdom of phenomenal nature as well as absolute nature.
Reminds me of Ecclesiastes, a time to be born, a time to die. There's a certain poetry to it.
Are you aware of time? How do you relate to that? Matt, how do you relate to time in this way?
Can you say something a little bit more specific with the question, just so I?
Well, I guess, I pointed out, you just got married, you're a young man and everything, and you've got this whole thing, but here in front of you, this is saying, oh, well, it's time for you to leave home. And you say, what are you talking about? I just got my own home. I'm just going to start my own family and everything like that. Why are you telling me that? How do you fit that in to the scope of time?
I guess for me, I'm at a stage of my life where I've hit a stage where I don't feel young anymore. I mean, I know I'm relatively young, but I'm hitting a stage where it's having much more of a resonance of like, okay, this isn't gonna go on forever, in a way that's hard to feel when I was a bit younger. So I feel like for me, that's a lot of what I've been um, kind of thinking about or feeling as I'm starting to, you know, I don't know what's considered middle age or not, but like kind of moving more towards that or something where, um, I don't know, I guess on the opposite. So there's a time for everything. And I don't know, I guess sometimes it's hard to see what that time is other than in hindsight. So, and what is the role of pushing ourselves to something that we, you know, uh, something that we need or something that we, quote unquote, should be doing or something. It's like there's kind of like some kind of balance there, some kind of tension between some kind of dialectic or something of the acceptance, the going with the flow, honoring, okay, what is my dharma at this time or something, but also at times needing to like, I don't know, push or something.
Do you feel like that you're on time with yourself? Do you have a sense of that?
Um, I mean, this is getting just like really into my personal story of things, I guess, but like I've chronically felt behind, um, compared to like my cohort and friends and everything, just because of the course that my life took. And, I was just a mess earlier in my life. So I went back to school later. I got my graduate degree later. I started my career later. And, I'm getting married a little bit later than most of my friends. So I've always had this kind of thing of feeling a little bit behind. Um, yeah. I don't feel quite as much now as I used to. It used to be a big thing that weighed on me, but.
Okay. Brendan, can you speak to that? How do you feel about, being on schedule with yourself?
Well, I'll answer the related earlier question you asked about my conception of time. I think that's what you asked initially. And I have a very fraught, I would even say neurotic relationship with time. It's not a positive one. I tend to live in the past too much. I mourn what I've lost in terms of my children getting older. And I mourn the fact I can no longer take care of them the way I could when they were very little. And that in some ways, although I was a good dad, I squandered that time by not being as mindful and present mentally as I could have been. And so I think that the Buddha has a lot of wisdom in terms of the antidote to what I experience. One of which is that, the present moment, as Alan Watts would say, the present moment is the only time that anything is really happening. And even our memories and the way that we continually reinterpret our past is occurring in the present moment in our minds. We simply cannot time travel to the past. It's impossible. And if we think that we're doing that by contemplating the past, even that is happening in the present. And so the trick is to be as mindful as we can right now and appreciate life as it is today, because we had samsaric concerns 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That was not the golden age that we might pretend that it was. And then the other thing is there's a Buddhist saying that, okay, imagine it's 15 years from now and whatever you have now is gone. All your kids are very old and they've left the house and you're by yourself. Well, guess what? You can go back to right now, because right now is happening and you can appreciate what you have in the present moment. So I know the antidote to my fraught relationship with time. I can talk about it, but I need to live it. So that's what I think of time.
Gary,
Watson, Eckhart Tolle are right. The only time is now.
Yeah.
But most of us, I think I could say without fear of contradiction, have been taught just the opposite for most of our lives. That time is a series of schedules and agendas and possibilities, goals for the future. Time is not now, but Watson Tolley, and I think reality and my own life experience after too many years told me that the time is now. The only time that exists is now. But we don't live in a world structure that way. We have calendars, we have watches, and other elements of our life that make time something that is not ever really present, but time is something that is going to happen later. But time is now.
I'm thinking of another biblical quote. Now is the day of salvation. The idea being now is the time to pursue it.
Well, isn't that relative though? For what is the time for salvation for one person may be not practical for another person. In other words, somebody's living a life and hasn't come to that point of recognizing and realizing salvation. They're still swimming. They're still in the midst of it.
Well, if samsara is good, there's no need of salvation. But samsara being good is completely illusory. That's the deconstruction of Buddhism. And therefore, now is the day to pursue salvation, not to be lost in samsara. But people are happy in samsara. I think the thing I've realized recently is all the abstract talk about suffering has its place, but to really feel your suffering, you simply have to be honest. How am I suffering? And if you're honest, you can find it. And if you feel it, you're motivated to the Dharma.
Kagyu, would you have a comment about this?
Yeah. So we were just talking about, being samsara and enjoying samsara. And so in the story, that was my takeaway from the story we just read, is the Buddha's with the consorts and he's enjoying all the music, right? But the music is really just teaching him the teachings, right? So there's this idea that no matter where you are in life, even in the midst of pleasure and luxury, you can't help, if you're receptive, the teachings are there. It doesn't matter that you're in a cave, starving yourself. The Buddha's here, surrounded by all the beautiful consorts, hearing beautiful music and getting all the teachings. So for me, the takeaway is no matter where you are, no matter whatever you're doing, the teachings are there for you. You just have to be open to them. Impermanence and dependent origination. You're surrounded by those things all the time. All you have to do is recognize them. You don't have to go someplace special to witness them. You're witnessing your old age, sickness, and death in your own body. Thank you.
I have a question. All this encouragement for the for the bodhisattva to renounce and to more fully serve, if you will, pour his compassion out in service. I guess I guess it's I guess I'm kind of wondering, because he is free. He's not lost in all the pleasures of the world that surround him, but it's almost like they're trying to light a fire to to get him to move. Like there's something still deficient in the bodhisattva that he's not serving more directly, that he hasn't renounced for the greater good that would come from renouncing. It's kind of paradoxical.
Well, I think the quotes by Hrideva, and if you break the word up, Hrideva, Hri is the seed syllable Hri, which means the primal cause. And Deva is a god. In Sanskrit means the god. So it's the god of the primal cause. And what Hridaya was doing was reminding him of what you're just saying, that, it's time for you to do these things. You said you were going to do these things, and it's time for you to do these things, and they come naturally to you. But he's not talking just to the Bodhisattva Siddhartha, he's talking to all of us. We need to see ourselves as the Bodhisattva. We need to see ourselves in this story, as human beings who are well on the path. We're not ignorant of the path. We're knowledgeable of the path. And there comes a time, that was the element of the time. When is the right time for us to be able to engage that way? Some people might do it when they're 30 years old. Some people maybe when they're 20. Some people when they're 60. But the point is that we recognize, these propensities that we have.
Lance, can I comment on what you just said, please?
Sure.
About the right time. And so, when's the right time to practice the Dharma? When's the right time to be on the Dharma path? For me, it was later in life, late 40s, early 50s. And I think there's a reason for that. And if you look over at right around 13.92, 93, 13.94, talking about old age.
Old age, yes.
Old age withers men and women, just as the Malu ivy does to a thick sal forest, and all these different passages on old age. And I actually found old age to be liberating, or middle age, whatever my 50s are, to be liberating and a wonderful time to practice the Dharma.
That's not old.
No, it's not old. It's
You're going to have to hang around a while.
yeah. Well, but I mean, I'm older at 51 than I was at 21, right? And the thing about it is, in your 20s, it's, I want this job, I want this wife, I want this thing. There's so many different demands and pressures and fears. And well, what if I don't do this? Or what if I don't do that? There's too many choices and too much fear. For me, it was a time of tremendous fear of not measuring up. And, I'm never going to be an astronaut. That's okay. I didn't really want to be an astronaut, I'm making that up. But there's other things that I wanted to be that I'm not going to get to be. And I'm at peace with that. And in a way, I could never have been at peace in my 20s. So if you're looking at kind of giving up things of this world on the Dharma path, I think that it's nice when you move out of your youth, and what I'm talking about really is acceptance. That's really what I'm talking about, is acceptance.
And part of this, they were recounting all the names. And by the way, thank you very much to Kunga, who has gotten this twice now. But he read before, he had to read all those kinds of names, all those Hindu names, and he did a great job. And Matt got stuck with it this time too, and you did a wonderful job. So thank you very much for that. That was very good that you could do that. I was sweating bullets that I would have to do it. But
halfway down the page, I was like, "Uh-oh, this is."
Well, but the point that was being made was that all those names were all the prior lives and the prior Buddhas that the Bodhisattva had encountered in prior lives and so on, in his prior lives and so on, and the work that he had done. And so on, to get to where he is at this point, and we, we've said many times that we're very fortunate beings. We've got this precious human life, and we've it's a gift that we've given to ourselves through the work that we've done to be able to be here and so on. And so here is the example of the Buddha being reminded, or the bodhisattva being reminded of all these things, and giving him the encouragement that, wow, this is why you're here. And don't give up on this. I don't think they ever said, they never was a question he was going to give up on it. It was just a question of, now's the time, you know. And in the story that we talk about the Buddha, you know, that I've talked about many times, was that when his wife had just given birth, you know, very late in her life, you know, that they were well into their 20s, which was very late. And he knew that was the time that he had to leave the palace, because if he stayed, then he was going to feel the obligations of the emotions, of the afflictive emotions. His responsibilities were going to kind of like take over. So he was conscious of the time, that this was the time to make the change that he had to do, and so on. And I think many people, myself included, you know, had many thoughts like that.
There's all this talk about women in this, and consorts in this thing. It's kind of an interesting angle on this whole temptation of the Buddha, which makes me I've just stumbled into something else. Kazanzaka's book, The Last Temptation of Christ, is the temptation to a full worldly life. And the book is fascinating if you don't know anything about it. It's all like one big long dream sequence of a fulfilled life, of wife, children, fullness of life. But it's a temptation. But the other thing I'm thinking about, another literary illusion of sorts, is straight from the Milarepa movie, the one that has a wonderful soundtrack. And it gets me so powerfully when towards the end of the movie, he takes off the necklace that has his betrothed. It was given to him by his betrothed, and he places it at the rock cairn. And it's completely symbolic of how he's giving up everything in order to find Marpa, turning from all the world, just like the Buddha did when he left the palace. It's very moving. His whole life had revolved around this person he was probably betrothed to as a child, that he loved as a child and as he grew up, and he's feeling like he must renounce that to completely put his heart into pursuing the Dharma. Very moving.
Good observation.
I have one other thought. This whole study on encouragement, because that's the chapter's title. Encouragement is not one of the paramitas, but I see its connection to diligence or enthusiasm. If I am full of that enthusiasm for the Dharma, it will manifest as trying to encourage other people to have that enthusiasm too. It's encouraging is what you try to instill you try to encourage other people to some end or purpose, to motivate them, to make the case, to help them to find the reason, the desire, the passion for something. And there's so many ways we do it. We cajole people, we appeal to their pride, we might scare them. There are all these ways we're trying to get them to start moving, and it all goes under encouragement.
Yeah, and that's a big kind of function that this group serves for me, is the encouragement from being with you all and being around people who are also practitioners, being in interacting with you, Lance, and hearing you speak. That's a big part of it for me, is that it keeps me kind of focused, or keeps me grounded in the Dharma in some way, and keeps me encouraged. So it's not just like some island where I'm reading things and trying to do things. And in a Mahamudra Book of Mahamudra I was just reading, there's in a lot of the the Mahamudra being non-conceptual. It's hard to get at with any kind of logic or something to point to that space to develop that kind of faith, where maybe other areas in the path are that a lot of that faith comes from the contact with the teacher and the interaction with the mind of the teacher, of the guru, that's kind of like the powerful driver of the faith. And that's also making me think of that with the encouragement of being around other people and teachers and everything, and how that's, for me, has been one of the most important things to get me kind of back on track after a lot of years of kind of floundering around, prior to.
Congo, you turn your mic on. Did you want to say something?
I was thinking that aspiration is one of the paramitas, and I think aspiration can be thought of maybe as encouragement of yourself. You're trying to encourage yourself to these higher ideals. And then if I think about it that way, I think about this whole chapter as being an internal dialogue of the Buddha aspiring, to encourage himself to start his path. And it's, but there's that we were talking about time earlier, and there's only this present moment. So the story reiterates that, because it's constantly talking about the future that the Buddha needs to get started on, in the present where he already has the enlightenment already to get started on it. There's the past and the future have all been smashed down into this present moment. We're telling him that he's the Buddha, he needs to go on and get enlightened so he can be the Buddha, right? And we're teaching him, he's already experiencing all the teachings he's already given in the future and already gave in the past right now. And they're using that to encourage him to go forth. So it's really interesting. I find that interesting, the way time gets collapsed. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's all very nice, but it's almost like they're trying to goad him to get engaged instead of just sit around aspiring. Engaged bodhisattva.
That's just for us.
What do you think about the practical aspect of this? And there was a reference that it is like a rite of passage for a bodhisattva to have this time with the consorts. And in the story of the Buddha, the way I've always told the story is that, he grew up in the palace, and in the palace he learned, the martial arts. We talked about that the last time, that we looked at that chapter. I think it was chapter 11 or 12. We talked about the martial arts and then, developing his skills and writing and doing all those things, those mundane things that he was doing. But at the same time, they were worldly things, that he could become the universal monarch based on all those things and so on. And he knew that this was his last life. He knew that this was his last incarnation as a human being, that he was going to become Buddha, and he was never to return again as anything other than Buddha, who, but the Buddha doesn't have a form, He would have this form in this life, but once he gave up this body, that was it. And so he knew that. And so there was this practical part of being able to see or to be part of, because he was a teacher to the wanton women, and to show them that you can engage in being a human being, in everyday human being things, satisfying ourselves in all the different ways we satisfy ourselves, but not become attached and not be jealous and not have the delusions and so on like that, that he became a living embodiment of that kind of lesson. And that was part of his rite of passage.
It was a pretty cushy job he had. I'm thinking too, there's kind of a polarity or two ends of the spectrum. One is we're compelled by our pain we hit bottom. We're miserable, we're desperate. And the more I get better, or I should say, the more I recover, the less pain it takes. I'm using 12-step kind of recovery language. The less pain it takes to get my attention. I'm more willing. I can feel it, and I'm quickly turned towards the Dharma. I don't have to be. I'm not as hard-headed. Well, the other end of the spectrum is kind of like this character that this whole chapter surrounds. He has no pain whatsoever, and he's being encouraged to stretch, to go further, to give up a very wonderful existence, which is full of Dharma and everything, but to give it up out of compassion, to renounce, to set the example, to be more engaged in the world. And it's not pain that's there. It's an encouragement to reach for something greater than this high life of very high life, almost like a proud God realm almost, to go beyond something that's very pleasant, to take on the world. And that's the ultimate renunciation that the bodhisattva has to make in order to become the Buddha.
Well, we're running out of time, but I would like to just point one more thing out and leave enough time for everybody to comment if you want. And that is, they kept on making the point of the music and the consorts producing the music, which was the voice of the Buddhas, that was telling him, what he had to do. And it was in the morning to awaken. And I've got this banner. Somebody, a very special person to me, gave me this banner, which has a caricature face of the Dalai Lama that's in my bedroom. And it says, when you wake up in the morning, think about what you're going to do and who you're going to do it for, and what good Dharma things you're going to do, what virtue you are going to spread today. And I think that was a point that was being made here, by with the music the first thing in the morning and so on, was speaking to the bodhisattva in that way. Anybody got any closing comments you'd like to make?
I'm left with the one thought, basically, to ask myself, or one question to ask myself: how do I need to get going? How do I need to up my game? How do I need to be more enthusiastic? How am I asleep and need to wake up? What's it going to take? And I don't have much time. I'm feeling the pinch of time. I'm 65. You guys that are younger, it goes by quick.
All right. Well, I think the answer is always practice. Whatever we're stuck, it means practice. And there's different practices, for when you get stuck. If you're doing the same thing over and over again and you're still stuck, then you need to find something else. So, so there's things like that. And I think that's why we have our teachers, our spiritual friends, because we can speak to them, relate to them what's going on, and then listen to their advice, and then take their advice, even if you don't maybe right away agree with it. You might say, "Oh, I don't need that. I got that sussed out. It's not that. It's something else. I'm waiting for the magic switch or something like that. I don't want to have to work too hard for this. And so the answer is always in practice. That's where the work is. What would you say to that, Kunga?
Say it. Ask me your question again.
Well, I was just saying that whenever we get stuck, it's practice that we got to bear down on, and maybe we have to change the practice that we're doing in some way to kind of break through. That we can get plateaued at different times.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful about how much we want to improve our practice. I think that it becomes a problem if our practice just becomes another thing to make ourselves a better person. I think the practice is to wake up. It's not to be a smarter person or have less stress. The practice is just to wake up. And sometimes you just need to do the practice and not worry about that you're not going anywhere. That grasping on to being somewhere or getting something is like a barrier to practice. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
That's a good point. All right, well, fellas, thank you very much. It was a very interesting discussion, I think, and everybody had good points to say. And so we'll do our dedication. The dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgun. It's on page 36 of the red book that we have our prayer book. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mothers sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you, brothers.
Thank you, Lance.
See you next week.
Yep.
Thank you, Lance. See you next week.